In a small village surrounded by mountains and lush farmland, there lived a princess named Amaka. She was the eldest daughter of King David, known throughout the village for her kindness and gentle heart. However, Amaka faced a unique challenge: her size. Due to a rare condition from birth, she grew at an extraordinary rate, becoming unusually large and muscular. She towered over most of the villagers, her presence intimidating to those around her. As she grew older, her physique became even more pronounced, and although she was kind, her imposing appearance made it difficult for her to be accepted by the villagers. Mothers would hurriedly gather their children when she passed, and young men would avoid her entirely. Because of her size, Amaka struggled to attract any suitors. Most men were terrified of the idea of having a wife so much larger and stronger than them. This became a problem for King David, who had no sons to inherit the throne. With only 2 daughters, Amaka and her younger sister Precious, it was crucial for Amaka to marry and secure a male heir. Yet, despite the pressure to wed, Amaka found it nearly impossible to find someone willing to look past her appearance. She often felt cursed by fate, but she remained devoted to her people, serving them with compassion and grace. However, Amaka's loneliness weighed heavily on her. Whenever she felt overwhelmed, she would sneak into the forest, away from the palace guards, to cry and find comfort in nature. One day, as she wept in solitude, a loud cry for help interrupted her. Startled, she listened closely and heard a man's voice calling out from a nearby path. Without hesitation, Amaka rushed towards the voice and found a man trapped beneath a fallen tree. He was short and handsome, dressed in the attire of a hunter. "How did you end up under this tree?" Amaka asked. "I was hunting when it happened," the man replied. "But please, help me first, and I'll explain everything after." With her immense strength, Amaka effortlessly lifted the tree and freed the man. Grateful, he introduced himself as Dyke, a hunter and the grandson of Dimpa, the village's greatest chief priest. "Thank you for saving me," Dyke said. "By the way, what is your name, mighty lady?" "I am Princess Amaka," she replied, somewhat shyly. "Oh, of course. You're the beautiful giant princess everyone speaks of," Dyke said, smiling warmly. Amaka was taken aback. "Beautiful giant," she repeated, unsure whether to feel flattered or insulted. Dyke quickly reassured her. "I mean it in the best way. You're tall and strong, yes, but you're also beautiful. The others are wrong to judge you by your size." Amaka blushed, having never heard someone call her beautiful before. "Thank you," she whispered. As the two talked, Amaka felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time: acceptance. Dyke didn't fear her size. Instead, he saw her for who she truly was. Curious, Dyke asked why she was in the forest alone. "I come here when I feel lonely," Amaka admitted. "It's the only place where I can find peace, away from people who see me as a beast." Dyke shook his head. "You're no beast, Amaka. From now on, you don't have to be alone. I'll be your friend and I won't judge you for your size." Hearing this, Amaka's heart swelled with joy. She had finally found someone who accepted her without fear. They spent the rest of the day talking and laughing, and Amaka felt a connection unlike any she had ever known. As night fell, Amaka bid Dyke farewell, promising to meet him again in the forest the next day. She snuck back into the palace, careful not to be seen. But when she entered her room, she found her younger sister, Precious, waiting for her. Precious, in contrast to Amaka, was considered the most beautiful in the kingdom. She had many admirers and never missed an opportunity to flaunt her beauty, often mocking Amaka for her size and lack of suitors. Seeing her sister sneaking back into the room, Precious smirked and began her usual taunts. Well, well, dear sister, where have you been? You seem awfully happy for someone who spends most of her time alone. To have another mischievous day running around the kingdom, haven't you? Don't you realize that you're disgracing our family when you spend time in the forest? What if someone saw you, a whole princess, acting like a wild animal? It's bad enough that you look like a beast. But at least don't act like one. And let's not even talk about how worried you made Daddy. You should go and tell him you're back and apologize for running off," said Amaka. Wait. It seems like you've been watching me for some time now. I'm not happy with the way you keep calling me a beast. I've warned you before to stop. How did you even find out about me going to the forest? And how did Daddy know?" Precious responded. Oh, please. The guards you think are helping you hide your secrets are easy to break. Especially with a little threat. Why wouldn't I tell Daddy? You're bringing shame to our family name. The king has a right to know why his subjects are losing respect for him, because his daughter is running around the village like a fool, Amaka retorted. Precious, precious, precious. How many times must I tell you to stop calling me that, Amaka warned. Oh, you mean beast. Oops, I keep forgetting, Precious said mockingly. Anyway, you better go report yourself to Daddy. He's been worried sick about his little beast of a daughter. Later, Amaka followed Precious' advice and went to see her father, King David. With every step toward the king's quarters, fear gripped her. She could feel her heart racing as she thought about how disappointed her father must be. First, she had failed to attract suitors for marriage, jeopardizing the royal lineage. Now, she was sneaking out of the palace. These thoughts made her stomach churn, but she pressed on and finally reached her father's chambers. Upon arrival, she saw her father, King David, deep in conversation with one of his advisors. She waited quietly outside until they finished. When King David noticed her, he invited her in. My daughter, why do you cause me such worry? I've been so anxious. Why have you been sneaking off to the forest? Don't you know you are a princess? King David asked. Father, I'm so sorry if I've disappointed you. Yes, I've been going to the forest for some time now. I know it's not proper, but the forest is the only place where I feel like myself, where I can find peace. Here in the palace, I'm constantly reminded of how much of a failure I've been to you, to our family, and to the kingdom. Amaka confessed. I'm not angry, my daughter, King David said softly. I'm just worried about you. I don't mind you exploring the kingdom after all. One day you will inherit it. But sneaking out without protection and not informing me, that's what I don't like. You are royalty, and most importantly, my beloved daughter. Oh, Daddy, please forgive me. I promise I'll always take a palace guard from now on. But please, don't stop me from going to the forest. I've made a friend, and I want to see him again tomorrow. Him? Who is this friend of yours? King David asked curiously. His name is Dyke, son of Inwake and grandson of Dimpa, the greatest chief priest our village has ever known. He's also a noble hunter, Amaka explained. A hunter, you say? And he's the grandson of Dimpa? Interesting. I'm happy for you, Amaka. It's been so long since you've brought a friend around. You have my blessing to see him tomorrow, but promise me you'll take a guard for your safety, King David said. Amaka's face lit up with joy. Thank you, Daddy. I promise I'll always take a guard with me. You won't have to worry about my safety anymore. Good, but be cautious with this new friend of yours. Make sure he's trustworthy, King David advised. Don't worry, Daddy, I promise he's not dangerous. Good night, Daddy. Thank you again, Amaka said as she left her father's chambers, her heart full of happiness. Meanwhile, Precious had been eavesdropping on the conversation and was not pleased with how things went between Amaka and their father. As Amaka exited the king's quarters, Precious silently slipped away to her room. The next day, as promised, Amaka took a palace guard and went to the forest to meet Dyke. When she arrived, Dyke looked surprised to see the guard and asked if she felt unsafe with him. No, not at all, Amaka reassured him. It's just that my father found out I was coming to the forest alone, and he insisted I bring a guard for protection because I'm royalty. I'm certainly not afraid of you, Dyke. Dyke relaxed upon hearing this, and they spent the rest of the day together talking, laughing, and hunting. Amaka proved to be a natural hunter, just like Dyke, and they shared many hobbies, dreams, and values. As time passed, their bond grew stronger, and Amaka's visits to the forest became a regular occurrence. This newfound friendship transformed Amaka's life. Once sad and withdrawn, she now radiated joy and hope after each visit. Everyone in the palace noticed the positive change in her, especially King David. But there was one person who hated seeing Amaka so happy. Precious. Precious thrived when Amaka was sad and isolated because it brought her closer to her ultimate goal. You see, since childhood, Precious had been jealous of how their parents showed Amaka extra love and care because of her condition. She had always envied Amaka's birthright as the next ruler of their land. And when no man showed interest in marrying Amaka, Precious saw an opportunity. She hoped that when Amaka reached an age beyond marriage, she would be the one to take her place as the ruler. As the friendship between Amaka and Dyke deepened, blossoming into something that could turn into love or even marriage, Precious knew she was in trouble. Her carefully laid plans were at risk of falling apart. I need to act fast, she thought. The next morning, after Amaka left to meet Dyke, Precious rushed to her father's chambers. Without waiting for the meeting with his advisors to end, she stormed in. "Father, forgive my intrusion, but I need to speak with you immediately," Precious blurted out. King David looked at her sternly. "What could be so important that you interrupt my meeting like this?" he asked. "It's a matter of life and death, Father," she replied urgently. Sighing, the king gestured for his advisors to leave. Once they were alone, he faced Precious. "Now speak. What's so urgent?" "Father, you are not getting any younger, and neither are Amaka or I. Soon the throne will need to be inherited, but Amaka still hasn't secured a husband. According to tradition, she cannot take the throne without one. She has failed you, Father. She has failed the kingdom," Precious said, her tone sharp. King David frowned. "And what do you propose we do about it?" "Father, I am healthy, beautiful, and have many suitors who would marry me in a heartbeat. You should revoke Amaka's birthright and make me your successor. I can secure the future of the kingdom," she said confidently. King David's expression darkened. "How dare you speak this way about your sister, my firstborn? You would have me betray her for your own gain. Evil has taken root in your heart, Precious, and it must be dealt with." He continued, his voice stern. "From now on, your access to the royal treasury is revoked. You will be allowed only one servant, and your meals will be reduced to 3 a day. You will live under this punishment until I see fit to release you." "Father, I was only being practical. Amaka will never marry, and the throne might fall to a commoner when I am still here," Precious protested. "Enough," King David shouted. "Amaka has a suitor, Dyke, a man she has been seeing. Instead of supporting her, you plot against her behind her back. Get out of my sight before I increase your punishment." As Precious quickly left the room, Amaka entered, having overheard the commotion. "Is everything all right, Father?" she asked. "Nothing to worry about," my dear King David replied calmly. "Your sister misbehaved, and I corrected her." Relieved, Amaka smiled. "Thank you, Father. I'll head back to my chambers." "Wait," Amaka, King David said, stopping her. "I've heard of this friend you've been seeing, Dyke. Is that right? I'd like to meet him." Amaka chuckled. "Of course, Father. I'll bring him by tomorrow. You'll like him. He's very charming." "Good," King David replied. "I look forward to meeting him." The next day, Amaka met Dyke in their usual spot in the forest. She smiled as she saw him with a bicycle. "I didn't know you had a bike," she teased. Dyke grinned. "There's a lot you don't know about me, Amaka. But I do know one thing: you've never ridden a bike before, right?" Amaka laughed. "How did you know?" "Well, I figured you've spent most of your life being carried around in royal chariots. Maybe it's time I teach you how to ride a bike like a commoner." "All right," Amaka said, excited. "Let's do it." They spent most of the day with Dyke teaching Amaka how to ride. At one point, they both lost balance and fell, landing on the ground together. As they lay there, their eyes met, and the moment turned tender. Dyke, filled with emotion, took a deep breath and said, "Amaka, these past few months with you have been the happiest of my life. I've fallen in love with you. Will you marry me?" Tears of joy filled Amaka's eyes as she nodded. "Yes, Dyke, I will marry you." Dyke slipped a wooden ring onto her finger, and Amaka smiled in recognition. "This ring," she said, "it feels familiar." Dyke smiled. "I carved it from the very tree you rescued me from when we first met." Overwhelmed with happiness, Amaka told Dyke that her father wanted to meet him. "Now that you're my fiancé, it's even more important that he gets to know you," she said, beaming with excitement. The king agreed to meet Dyke, but before proceeding, Dyke revealed a surprise he had planned for Amaka. "What is it, my love?" Amaka asked eagerly. "Well, Amaka," Dyke began, My grandfather was a renowned chief priest. I know you've always felt self-conscious about being so tall and muscular. A few weeks ago, I started inquiring among my grandfather's old associates about a possible spiritual remedy for your condition. Last week, I learned that there's a cure. There's a shrine deep within the Agba evil forest, across the Agony River. This shrine is filled with powerful spiritual energy. If you break a special egg there precisely at midnight during a full moon, any wish you make about yourself will come true. So, if you wish to become less muscular and more like you've always wanted, it could really happen, Dyke explained. Amaka was overjoyed. Oh my God, Dyke, this is incredible news. My father will be thrilled to hear this, along with our engagement, she said excitedly. Yes, my love. So what are we waiting for? Let's go tell your father, Dyke responded. They left the forest, this time walking proudly through the village's public road, hand in hand. The villagers were astonished to see a handsome man walking with the imposing princess. Whispers and laughter spread through the crowd, some surprised, others mocking. Look at our giant princess with this man. It's like Beauty and the Beast, but this time the man is the beauty some children jeered. At first, Amaka felt disheartened by the villagers' reactions, but when she looked into Dyke's eyes, she felt a deep sense of calm. She realized that the only opinion that mattered to her was Dyke's, who saw her as beautiful and kind. They continued their walk until they reached the palace. Precious, observing from the palace gates, hid in the corridors, hoping to catch them entering the king's chambers. Amaka and Dyke, accompanied by guards, entered the king's presence, where they both knelt respectfully. King David greeted them. Rise and take a seat. Amaka began, Father, this is Dyke, the man who has been making me so happy. But Daddy, he is no longer just a friend. King David looked puzzled. What do you mean? You told me he was your closest friend. Amaka replied, Father, I think it's better if Dyke explains. Very well, young man. Please tell me more, King David said. Dyke stood and addressed the king. Great King David, ruler of our land, may your reign be long. Yes, Amaka and I were once friends, but today we are more than that. I am honored to ask for your daughter's hand in marriage. She has accepted. The king was overcome with emotion, tears streaming down his face. This news brings me immense joy. You have my full support for your union. We will arrange a royal wedding for you both, King David said, wiping his tears. Amaka added, Thank you, Daddy. We're grateful. Dyke continued, My liege, there's more good news. I found a cure for Amaka's condition. It's located in the Agba evil forest. If we perform the necessary ritual at the shrine, she can be cured permanently. King David was cautious. Are you sure about this cure? Many have ventured into the Agba evil forest and never returned. If I allow this, can you ensure my daughter's safety? Yes, my liege, Dyke assured. The cure is reliable. I swear to protect Amaka with my life. I am the grandson of Dimpa, the greatest chief priest our land has known. We will return safely and with the miracle she deserves. King David, encouraged, said, Very well, brave Dyke. You have my blessing for this mission. I will provide you with 10 of my best guards to ensure your safety. I assume you want to undertake this mission before your wedding. Yes, King David, Amaka, and Dyke agreed in unison. As they chatted, Precious, who had overheard everything, felt a pang of despair. Amaka has found a suitor, and they've discovered a cure. All my plans to become the next ruler are falling apart, she thought, trying to compose herself. But I still have a chance to secure my future. I must act quickly, she resolved. Amaka and Dyke left the king's quarters, passing by Precious, who ignored them with a cold demeanor. This was the first sign of Precious's hostility toward their union, though Amaka and Dyke were unaware. The next morning, Precious sneaked out of the palace to visit her friend Elizabeth, whose aunt was one of the feared witches of a neighboring kingdom. Precious asked Elizabeth to take her to her aunt, willing to make any sacrifice to ensure Amaka and Dyke's union failed. If you like this video and want to see part 2, leave a comment saying part 2, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you'll be the first to know when the next episode is out.